Did you know that 80% of the sewage in the world goes untreated? 80%. And it pretty much is happening everywhere. You might think that, hey, where I live, it's a developed country, we treat our sewage. But I will show you what is the real situation, because most people don't understand what's going on right now. And I will also show you how we can solve it easily at each building, how each building can actually treat its own sewage and then reuse it to reduce its own water consumption up to 70%. So let's start with understanding what is really going on today, because most people have no idea that this is happening. So the way our cities are designed, most of them at least, is that we have buildings, and our buildings are connected to a sewage system. And in most of the cities, the sewage system that comes out of the buildings are the same sewage system that is connected to our streets. So our streets as well have drainage systems. So when it rains, they're able to absorb the water, so the city doesn't flood, which it still does with today's weathers. And then what is supposed to happen is that this sewage should go to basically sewage plants. So these are big, hungry sewage plants that consume a lot of energy and chemicals to treat our sewage. And they're very expensive to build, and they require a lot of maintenance. So the idea is that this sewage goes to the sewage system to be treated, and then the sewage system, when it treats it, it can later throw it out to the environment. That is the idea, that the water goes out from the sewage system and then it gets dumped, treated back to nature. But what most people don't understand is that there is a line in our sewage system that goes directly to the ocean. Meaning that there is a way for all this sewage to bypass the treatment system. And why is that? Well, because the speed that we're building our cities, which is also crazy, because every single day humanity is building a city the size of Paris. If you sum up all around the world, the speed of us building cities, expanding our cities, the sum of that is the size of Paris, okay? So it's huge. So we keep building our cities so fast without really expanding our infrastructure behind it to support it at the same rate. So what happens is that when it rains really heavily, which has become very common in today's world, this sewage system that is supposed to be able to take all the water coming from the buildings and from the rain gets overloaded, meaning the amount of water that is trying to enter here is too much, so it cannot. So legally, all sewage treatment plants are allowed to dump their sewage straight to the environment without even treating it. So all the wastewater from the toilets coming from the buildings, the wastewater from many industries coming into the sewage system is legally allowed to go out to the ocean or to the environment because it's raining so heavy, the infrastructure cannot handle it. And this happens all the time, everywhere. You might say, hey Moin, but I live in Europe and Europe is very developed. No, even the majority of European countries are doing this. In the US, they're doing this. A lot of places are doing this. I mean, a lot of places also still don't have this treatment plant and the wastewater just goes straight out. That's also the reality. But a lot of what we call developed countries are still throwing their sewage out to the ocean. And there are oceans around the world right now in touristic areas where they basically have banned people from swimming because the level of pollution in the ocean is just too high. So this is the world we live in today. So if you are working with buildings and cities, if you don't understand how to manage wastewater, you are not being part of the solution. You are actually being part of the problem. So today I'm going to show you how you can become part of the solution. So you'll be surprised how easy this is. And I used to as well think that this wasn't possible until I actually started building it and saw it for myself that it's completely doable. It's cheaper than conventional treatment system, both to build and to maintain it. And in the end of the day, you save money. So let's look at the building. And I will take an urban example because many people don't think you can do this in urban areas. You can only do this in rural areas. It's not true. I will show you how to do it in urban areas. So if we take conventional building and we take a high-rise building, which say has 3 stories, and in this case we also have a basement. So it's a very common thing for urban buildings to have a basement. So the way you would manage it in most buildings is that you would first of all need to collect the wastewater. And what makes sense is to collect the wastewater in the bottom so you can just use gravity. And what I'm about to show you is also very easy to do on existing buildings. This is not only for a new building, okay? So what you have to do, step 1, is to collect the wastewater. So what you do is you place what is called a septic tank in the basement. Or it can even be underneath the ground if you don't have the basement. So then what you do is you collect the wastewater from the WC. You collect it from showers, sinks, washing machine, you know, whatever. And if you're dealing with an existing building, then all of this is already mixed. So you take the wastewater from all these and you bring it down into a septic tank. And then the septic tank has 2 chambers. And what a septic tank is a tank where you have no oxygen. So it's completely enclosed. It has a lid, so you have access, but it's completely enclosed. There's no oxygen coming in there. And what happens in this chamber is that in the first part of it, you have the solids building up. And then eventually there are bacteria, microorganisms living in there who actually thrive in the environment that is no oxygen. And they start eating the wastewater. And as they eat the wastewater transforms into liquid. So that liquid then starts overflowing through a pipe to the other side. So now you have more of a liquid and not solid. And this is the first part of the whole treatment system. Number one is to transform the solids into liquid, to make it easy for you to treat it to the next step. And then with a simple pump, we will pump up this liquid to the roof, because on the roof we are going to build a green roof that is actually the second treatment system. So this is a very common thing, and to build green roofs on the roof, right? And so you have different layers of the greenery, and there you plant certain plants. And what happens is that you're going to pump up the water from the septic tank, going all the way up in here. Now, what happens on the roof is pretty much the same thing, but this time you have different kind of bacteria and microorganisms that treats the wastewater. These ones thrive in an environment where there is a lot of oxygen. So if I make you a simple section of what actually goes on in the roof, so you get a better understanding, it's pretty much filled with materials similar to gravel, and this is because it can also be lightweight materials that can work as well. And then you could also have a layer of soil, not necessarily, it depends a little bit what you're gonna treat. And then you have the actual plants growing in there. And so you have the water coming in from one side to the system, and then when it enters here, the water is basically filling up. And what happens is that the roots here, they grow all the way down and establish themselves inside of the water, because that's what they thrive on. And now this water actually has a lot of nutrients because it's wastewater. It's organic matter that comes out of the toilet, the shower, and the sinks, and it's already transformed to liquid. And by the time it reaches here, it has nutrients for plants. Plants actually like this. And here's the thing. I used to think that the plants are actually treating the wastewater, but with time, the more I did this, I've been doing this for 15 years, I learned that it's actually the bacteria. So for those who are wondering, can I grow this, can I grow that? Yes, you can grow different kind of plants, because in the end of the day, it's the bacteria inside of here that makes the treatment, the microorganism. But there are certain plants that makes the system way more efficient, and I will explain you why. Because if you remember, the first treatment system is based on creating an environment that has no oxygen. The second one is all about oxygen. Number 2 is all about oxygen. And what happens here is that there is a wind. The movement that these plants create when it blows, when it's windy outside, they create a movement. And when they move, they actually bring down oxygen. So because their roots start moving, this whole thing starts moving, so they are actually now bringing in oxygen into the system. And the more oxygen they bring in, the more efficient the treatment works. So that's why typically the kind of plants that are used here is what is called reed bed plants. So these are the type of plants that normally grow in nature in ecosystems like wetlands. So when the water then passes through this, you have to understand that what is happening here is a giant natural filter. Like all these roots just interconnect with each other, and there's all these bacteria living in between there. So by the time the water comes out from here, it's actually went through a filter. That's how you have to see it, because normally we use filters to clean water, but we have to, produce those filters by using mechanical solutions or chemicals. But roots and microorganisms and bacteria are nature's filter. So this is what you create here. And from the moment you plant the plants, it just takes a couple of weeks for this to be fully established, and the system can work forever if it's well maintained. So then on the other side, you have pretty much clean enough water coming out that you can now reuse. So the water coming out of here could actually be reused. But before we reuse it, we have a third filter that we add to it, which is a UV filter. And pretty much what that is that is a pipe. It's just a simple pipe that the water has to pass through, and around that pipe, which is transparent, there is a light. There is a UV light. So this runs on electricity, and if you want, you can run this on solar panel if you want. So when the water actually is passing through this transparent point, there are tiny microorganisms still alive in the water, but the moment they pass through here, the light kills them. So by the time your water comes out from here, it is now complying with the local regulations for you to reuse it. So now your water has a big check and it's okay to be reused. Now, what can you reuse this water for? Well, you could reuse it for flushing your toilet, so you can bring it back to the toilet, because 30% of a building's water consumption goes to flushing toilets today. 1/3. So if you just reuse your wastewater for flushing your toilet, by this time it has no smell, it's clean. Why would you even flush your toilet with clean water. It makes absolutely zero sense. You're paying for water to flush down waste. It makes no sense at all. So doing that also creates a closed loop system, because check this out. When you flush the toilet, where does the water go? Well, the water goes back into the septic tank, where it transforms into liquid. It gets pumped up into the natural treatment system, goes through there, comes back, UV filter, and back to the toilet. That's it. That's a closed loop system. And you're reducing your water consumption with 30%. Now, what we also do is that we build green walls on buildings to help them to cool them down naturally. So if you are doing that as well, like we do, for example, if you have a green wall here on your building facade and you have plants growing there, then you could actually also irrigate your green wall. Or maybe your building has landscape, so you have plants growing and shading the building or whatnot. So you can also use this water for irrigating either your green walls, or you can also reuse it to irrigate your gardens. And the irrigation amount depends on how much greenery you have. But you know, we work with projects where almost 50% of their water consumption is irrigation, 50%. So if we reuse that water for flushing the toilet and for irrigating, we are saving more than 50% of water for the building, and that's money. And we live in a world where water is becoming more and more challenging. There's a lot of people leaving their countries and cities because of lack of water. There are literally cities that are evacuating their people because there's no more water. And at the same time, we are throwing away wastewater into the ocean without reusing it, polluting our environment, while every single building could actually treat its own wastewater and save money and stop polluting our beaches, our oceans, our parks. So if you are all about mastering green buildings, then you need to learn how to reuse wastewater. Green buildings are not just about making the buildings green. If you add greenery to your building, if you add a green roof, you add a green wall, you also need to do it in a way that you're not increasing the water consumption. And this is the way where you could actually do a green building, a green wall, a green roof that is being irrigated by the wastewater that comes out of the building. So if you would like to really understand how this is done in detail, how do we dimension this, how does this look in real-world projects, then you should join our Academy program, because inside of our Academy program, we show you real-world projects that we've done in 20 different countries with different solutions, from small scale to larger scale. And so that's really where you get to learn the practical solution. This is more than just an educational program, because every month we come together as a community, we share the latest projects that we're working on, and we also support you on your projects. So if you really want to master green buildings, you really need to learn how to reuse water. And the best place to master that is our Academy program. So make sure you join us when we open. Thank you.